broader understanding of the Bhagavad Gita. So that is the intention of our session today. And it will help you best if you actually have your notes next to you. If you do not have your notes, at least the slides that were passed around, if you can have them, that's even better. So, and you will see, because we had this course spread across a long duration of time, so it's always good to recall things in the end. So that is the intention behind this particular session. So let's begin with the invocatory prayers. Joining your palms together. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So yes, let's begin our summary of the Bhagavad Gita. And if you remember yesterday, I promised you that we are going to summarize the entire Bhagavad Gita in just one chart. So let me very quickly put it up for you. Okay, here we go. So here is our one chart summary of the entire Bhagavad Gita. Right. So let's see now what are the details that are being spoken of. So you can, some of you, like some of the terms will be familiar. So you are seeing a lot of terms here. So let me actually zoom in. Right, and we will begin right in the first chapter, where the key theme that we understood. And if you remember, when we discussed the first chapter, we said this chapter is a very, very important chapter, because the entire tone for the rest of Bhagavad Gita is set in this chapter. Because there are certain questions that Arjuna had, confusion, doubts that Arjuna had in his mind, and that led to his lamentation. And the entire Bhagavad Gita is basically an explanation or clarification of those doubts, and in helping to inspire Arjuna to get over his lamentation. Right? That is why, see, the first chapter of Bhagavad Gita begins with Arjuna's lamentation, and in that ultimate instruction, which we heard in the 18th chapter, where Krishna gave Ma Suchaha, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Praja Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Moksha Ishyami Iti Ma Sucha. Ma Sucha means do not worry. So you can see there's a very nice consistency of theme. Krishna is so consistent. He knew that this is Arjuna's situation of lamentation, and to overcome that, the entire Bhagavad Gita has been spoken. So if you remember, in our first chapter study, we discussed 5 main reasons why Arjuna did not want to fight. We spoke about his misplaced compassion. Then we spoke about his loss and loss attitude. Then we spoke about how he was fearful of all the sinful reactions he's going to get from the war. Then we spoke about how he saw that the entire fabric of society is going to be destroyed because of this war. And finally, after presenting so many arguments, Arjuna was still indecisive. So these are the 5 main arguments. But from the flow of the Bhagavad Gita, remember in this chart, we are going to cover only the important themes. So we're going to talk about mainly the 2 important concerns that Arjuna had, mainly his misplaced compassion and his fear of sin. So to clarify Arjuna's concerns about misplaced compassion, Krishna explains the whole science of soul. We called it the Jnana section, where the difference between matter and spirit, body and soul, has been highlighted, right? And this Jnana process, if you remember, we use the term detached disengagement, right? So here we'll use a term here, detached inaction. So basically in this path of Jnana, and something that we saw in the last chapter, also in the 18th chapter, where Krishna, while describing the confidential path, he says that such a pure soul gives up work, takes up renunciation, takes up the path of sannyasa, right? So it is very much a bona fide process. However, for Arjuna, that was not relevant, and Krishna wanted to give something more deeper and more profound. So while he spoke about this Jnana, the science of soul, Krishna's intention was to help Arjuna understand what is a true object of one's compassion. Not just the body, but mainly the soul. So just to drive home that point, Krishna gave the philosophy of Jnana, which otherwise is the process of detachment or detached inaction, right? But then to help Arjuna go to the next level, Krishna gave him the process of detached engagement in the process of Buddhi Yoga, right? A theme that we have repeatedly, I think at this stage in the course, the word Buddhi Yoga might have been very nicely internalized, right? So Buddhi Yoga is what? Karma on the solid foundation of Jnana with the mood and intention of Bhakti, right? So this is that non-fruitive work that we use that term. Basically, one is engaging in one's activities, but not attached to the results of one's action, right? So one is acting, but in a detached way. So that detached action is the path that Krishna gave to Arjuna. But the Buddhi Yoga process in itself, it confused Arjuna, because at one level, Buddhi sounds like intelligence, and intelligence is connected to Jnana. And Krishna spoke about this process of detachment already. He began the 2nd chapter by talking about detachment. So Arjuna could not comprehend this aspect of how can detachment and action go together. So he very conveniently misunderstood the entire 2nd chapter, focusing more from the point of view of work. Because from the point of view of work, Buddhi Yoga sounds very similar to the Sakama Karma or fruitive action, because the element of action is present, right? And that was a confusion Arjuna had in the beginning of 3rd chapter. Whereas from Krishna's perspective, Jnana and Buddhi Yoga are the same. There is no difference between the two, right? Just like how in the 18th chapter, again, we saw Krishna says there is no difference between a sannyasi and a tyagi. If a sannyasi is following the process of Jnana, a tyagi is following the process of Buddhi Yoga. Because both are detached from the fruits, they are not getting entangled in their work, in their actions. So from Krishna's perspective, from the detachment perspective, both are equally detached. Arjuna was looking at it from the work point of view, therefore he saw the difference. And that was the question that Arjuna had in the beginning of the 3rd chapter, where he says, Krishna, why do you want to engage me in this gruesome war? If you actually think that detachment is the best. So then Krishna understood that Arjuna did not understand anything. So he breaks down this concept of Buddhi Yoga into dutiful work and knowledge of work. Remember, we discussed this in that section where we said when a subject is very big and complicated, an expert teacher breaks it down into smaller palatable bits and feeds it to the student, right? So that is exactly what Krishna does. To understand Buddhi Yoga, we have to first break down what is karma, what is jnana, how that integration happens, right? So that is the theme for the third, fourth, and fifth chapters. In third chapter, Krishna spoke about this concept of dutiful work or prescribed duties, and Krishna calls it as yajna. It is as good as a Vedic sacrifice. So that was a chapter of Karma Yoga, where based on one's nature, one identifies one's prescribed duties as given by the Vedas, and just by following one's prescribed duties, one will be engaging in dutiful work, and that in itself gives one a lot of internal peace and and internal alignment, just by being true to one's nature, right? If imagine if somebody is a creative person, like a thinker, a writer, a speaker, right? And imagine if such a person is not engaged in their duty, in their prescribed duty, right, and rather doing something totally different, then such a person will not find that internal grounding or alignment. And no matter what they do in their life, they'll always feel a sense of internal imbalance. So this entire Karma Yoga is just solution right at that level, just finding an internal alignment by the means of work itself, right? So finding that alignment according to one's inclinations is very, very important, right? But along with that, there's also a challenge in this Karma Yoga. While you're being true to your inclinations, there may also be some cravings that may come up. And what is that cravings? In the form of desire, selfish desire. Kama esha krodesha rajoguna samudbhava, right? Because of this rajoguna, the mode of passion, kama or lust or selfish desire may come up. So Prabhupada, in that section, he gives this 3S formula, where through sadhana, that is basically using your mind in sadhana, engaging your intelligence in swadhyaya, and your body in seva, right, one will be able to overcome this lust. Specifically, Krishna uses the third principle, the low-hanging fruit of controlling one's senses through regulation. That is a way to control one's selfish desire and achieve success in this process of Karma Yoga or beautiful work. Then Krishna then talks about the knowledge of work, right? How should one work? There he explains the whole science of what is action, what is good action, that is sakarma, what is vikarma, forbidden action, and what is akarma or inaction, wherein you are acting but not getting the reactions to one's work. So he talks about his whole science of work, what are different ways in which one can engage in work, right? And he says that you should engage in this process of inaction. And for that inaction to happen, one needs to find a very strong, powerful, higher purpose or a spiritual purpose. And that is the context in which we discuss the Yajna 2.0, where in the fire of a higher purpose, when one offers one's attachment, one experiences resultant purification of life. So the work element is still there. It is carrying forward from the third chapter. But now, earlier in chapter number 3, a sense of duty directed or motivated one's work. But now, a higher purpose motivates one's work. And that is the upgradation, one develops by the time one comes to Yajna 2.0. But in this process, because you are constantly having to remind your purpose, there could be sometimes some doubts or faithlessness in this higher purpose. And when such doubts and faithlessness come, one should immediately go to a spiritual master, a self-realized personality. And doubts can be overcome through inquiry, and faithlessness can be overcome through submissive, humble, menial service. Tad vidhi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya. Pariprashna and seva, submissive inquiry and seva, service, are the key to overcome this doubts and faithlessness. And that is how one is now adding that extra component. It's not just work, right? It's not just dravya yajna, but jnana yajna one starts to perform in this stage, right? And now when this integration happens, then one needs to come to a level of, from dutiful work to dutiful work with knowledge, now one progresses to the concept of detached work or detached engagement or nishkama karma, right? And in that section, we discuss in chapter number 5 how actually, what do you mean by detached work? Because actually, in factual understanding, the three modes of material nature are the ones who are the acting doers. Paramatma is the mere sanctioning doer, and the individual soul is the desiring doer. So if one learns to just remain neutral in this whole cycle of doers, Prakriti will just continue to do, and because one is acting free from any kind of such selfish, egoistic motive, one will just remain as if one is seated neutral, unaffected, like the verse that says that seated as if in the city of 9 gates, neither working nor causing any work to be done, right? That is the principle of this detached work. But the challenge in this particular stage is the moment one's ego comes up, right? That is a challenge in Buddhi Yoga. Even in the 18th chapter also, when the more confidential path was being spoken of, Krishna also again says that if, however, one is influenced by one's ego, right, then such a person, will be lost in this particular path. In text number 59, and in text number 16, Krishna specifically in 58 and 59, where it says Machitta sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atha chetatvam ahankaran na shoshasi vinangshasi. So there in text number 58 and 59, yad ahankaram ashritya na yosyat iti manyate, right? So there he is talking about how this false ego is such a big detachment, big hurdle for this process of detached work. So how do I overcome this false ego? There we discussed that how vidya vinaya sampanne, right? So with vidya, with all this knowledge, one also needs vinaya or humility. And when that humility, as it develops gradually, humility also progresses us from detachment to devotion. And that is when one understands that when Krishna, when we understand that by our humility, we understand that I am not the master, but Krishna is a master. I am not the enjoyer. Krishna is a real enjoyer. And I am not fighting this battle of life all by myself, but I have Krishna as my best friend. Suhridam sarva bhutanam. So when I understand this, Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Suhridam Sarva Bhutanam Gyatmamam Shantirichati. Such a person is very, very peaceful, right? And that is a beginning of the devotional work, where one is now trying to situate Krishna as one's master, proprietor, and best friend. And that is when the progression from detachment to devotion begins. However, for the devotion to happen, one has to be fully conscious of Krishna. One's mind should be focused on Krishna. But if the mind itself is so troubled, right? So then how can one right? Then how can one focus on Krishna? So then this mind, which is so turbulent, restless, obstinate, and strong, we are here to overcome this nature of the mind. And that is to be overcome through abhyasa and vairagya, practice and detachment. And this is a very, very important thing, this practice and detachment. With practice, what are we doing? We are fine-tuning the cognitive aspects of our life, the intellectual aspect of our, the rational aspect of our life. And with detachment, we are training the emotive side of us. We are trying to, the emotional side of ourselves. We are trying to tune it. So this balance of logic and emotion is so very important for the mind to be peaceful. Because sometimes people may know a lot of things, but they may not be able to accept things when disturbance comes in their life, right? That is a sign of high intelligence but very low emotional quotient. Or sometimes what may happen, right, that it may seem like emotionally they're very strong, but when bewildering situations come, they're confused what to do. right? They just continue to suffer silently, right? Because they're not clear about what to do next, because they have not trained their logical, in the intellectual side. So this balance is very, very important. That is why Abhyasa and Vairagya is such a powerful principle for controlling the mind. We need to tune both our cognitive and emotive sides. And then when the mind is such fixed, then that is a true yogi who is always remembering Krishna. So you see how the first 6 chapters, which are all talking about some kind of an action-oriented process, detached work, then working with a knowledge, then first is prescribed work, then working your prescribed duties in knowledge, then detached work, and finally devotional work. So you see, in the entire progression, work is a common theme. That is why our acharyas, they like to call the first 6 chapters as the karma section of the Bhagavad Gita, not to be confused with the karma yoga specific chapter, but the karma section. But then, because you have to always remember Krishna, our mind, our awareness, our consciousness should be filled with Krishna. That is where the next 6 chapters begin, because it is directly about remembering Krishna. It is the bhakti section of the Bhagavad Gita, chapters 7 to 12. So how do I always remember Krishna? For which I have to learn to know about Krishna first, right? Tat Shrunu, Krishna explains in the beginning of the first verse of the 7th chapter. Hear about me. So what does it mean to know Krishna? Knowing Krishna means knowing 3 things: matter, spirit, and controller of both. That is what knowing Krishna means, like that. And by doing so, one learn to see Krishna as the absolute truth. One learn to see Krishna in every aspect of creation. We saw examples, whether if you are an Ashtanga yogi going into the forest, then the sun and the moon and the Om and your abilities, they are all coming from Krishna. If you are a tapasvi, performing austerities in a forest, then all the forms of life that you see, the warmth of fire that you use in the forest, they are all Krishna. Or if you are a karma yogi engaged with one's work, the ability in you, that sex life which is devoid of, which is not contrary to the Vedic principles, all of that is Krishna. So at whichever practice, whichever system of practice you may take up to, one has to, or one learns to see Krishna as the essence, seeing him as in everywhere and in everything. So if indeed Krishna is so dominantly present in everything as that active principle, why is it that we are not able to see Krishna? Because of the 3 gunas. Daiviyeshi gunamayi mama maya durattaya mameva prapadyante maya metam tarantite. So this prapadyante, when one surrenders to Krishna, that is when one will be able to overcome these 3 modes. But the problem is, the moment you use of surrendering to Krishna or surrendering to something higher than us, then 2 potential misconceptions come. So if you notice the color coding that we used in this particular chart, right? So all the reds are the dangers, all the greens are what we need to do, and blacks are the explanations that you see. So immediately 2 red font texts are going to come up here. So the potential misunderstanding that may happen in the process of surrender is, 1, you may start surrendering to anybody greater than you, including the devatas. Or you may say, oh, Krishna is so great, he's so great that he cannot have a form. And that way one will come to a philosophical misinterpretation of the impersonal philosophy. So both need to be overcome, right? And for that, one needs to purify one's existence by proper understanding of Krishna, right? And then when understand that Sa Advaita, Sa Adibhuta, Sa Adideva, how he is the the Adideva, Adibhuta, Adiyagya of this entire creation, then one will be genuine understanding Krishna properly and will not succumb to these 2 philosophical misconceptions. And in that state, one can remain always absorbed in Krishna. And if one can die with that consciousness of Krishna, then one will attain to the spiritual world directly, right? And so this was how Krishna ends the 8th chapter. But then we saw in the 7th chapter, it was more of understanding Krishna from an intellectual conviction. In the 8th chapter, understanding Krishna or connecting to Krishna more through meditative absorption. But now, in chapter numbers 9 and 10, which is the heart of the Bhagavad Gita, there Krishna talks about connecting to him through loving devotion. And that was the Raja Vidya, Raja Guhya Yoga. So in that 9th chapter, the Raja Vidya, the confidential knowledge was knowing Krishna's mystical opulences, his Aishwarya Gyan, Pashyame Yogam Aishwaram. So by which one will be able to understand that ultimately Krishna is and he isn't. He is present, he is not present. He is in matter, he is still not matter. So that apparent contradictions are all resolved by understanding Krishna's Aishwarya, his mystical opulence, right? And then how does one then connect to Krishna? Again, you will see the worst people are the Duratmas who deride the form of Krishna. They reject Krishna. But then the not so good way, not so correct way are these Ekatvena Pritatvena Bahuda Vishwato Mukham. Those who are approaching Krishna in oneness or diversity or in the universal form, right? They are actually indirectly approaching Krishna, but that is still not the direct method. Or even those who are trying to approach Krishna through his subordinates as the devatas, they are also still trying to approach Krishna in an imperfect way. Because ultimately Krishna explains even the faith which they have in their pure devotion to, or the so-called pure devotion to the devatas, even that is sustained by Krishna, and Krishna is the one who's giving them the results. Right? So even that has been seen as an indirect process. But the Mahatmas, right? Mahatmanastu Mam Partha Daivim Prakriti Mashrita, because they have taken shelter of Krishna, right? So they are the ones who properly understand Krishna and connect to Krishna. So what is that proper connection that to Krishna that is Mahatmas exhibit? The Chatushloki Bhagavad Gita, text number 8, 9, 10, 11. Understanding, Aham Sarvasa Prabho Mattha Sarvam Pravartate. Krishna, the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Then when one understands that, what does one do? One engages in loving service of the Lord, beginning with hearing about the Lord, conversing about the Lord with other like-minded devotees. And as one does that, Machitta Madgata Prana Bodhyanta Parasparam, as one does that, what happens? Dadami Buddhi Yogantam, the Lord empowers one from seated within the heart. As Paramatma, he empowers them. And that is how Nashayami Atma Bhavasto Jnana Deepena Bhashvata Aham Agyanajam Tamaha. So that Agyana, the ignorance or avidya which is born due to this ignorance, Krishna destroys that. And that is how these Mahatmas, they achieve perfection of life. And that is how they are able to always remember Krishna like that. So then that was the 9th chapter where Krishna ends, by talking, or the 10th chapter where Krishna spoke about this whole Chatushloki. And then Arjuna then asks, oh, you are, yes, he realized that, oh Krishna, indeed, you are that supreme absolute truth. I want to see how you are pervading in everything as an active principle. So then Krishna spoke about his wonderful vibhutis or mystical opulences, how he is this, how he is that, how is the best of the best, how is the greatest of the greatest. All of that is described in the later half of the 10th chapter, right? So then the essence is learning to see Krishna as an active principle of everything. That was the main theme of the 10th chapter. So then Arjuna then had a question about, he wanted to see what is that form. You said that by my Maya Tadam Idam Sarvam Jagat Avyakta Murtina, by my unmanifested form, I'm pervading to this entire universe. Krishna, what is that unmanifested form? I want to see how you are personally there as this entire universe. So then Krishna shows in the universal form. But that picture of the universe, the sight of the universal form was quite scary and gruesome to Arjuna, and therefore he immediately asked Krishna to come back to his normal form. Right? So then after experiencing that sweetness of Krishna's personal form and the gruesomeness of Krishna's Avyakta, the universal form, Arjuna had a question that which is better? Those who worship your direct, personal, beautiful, Saumya Vapu, your gentle personal form, or those who worship your impersonal form. So Krishna explains actually both of them reach the destination, but those who are interested in my unmanifested forms, it's a very troublesome path. And finally, at last, they will reach me. But those who worship my personal form, I am their swift deliverer. I'm going to deliver them very quickly. And therefore, Krishna establishes himself with his personal form is much better. The 12th chapter, beginning of 12th chapter. Then we saw that whole hierarchy, the whole ladder of the spirituality spectrum. And Krishna says, so what does it mean to personally worship Krishna or to become a devotee of Krishna? To become a devotee of Krishna is not an external technique, but a whole internal transformation by which we imbibe certain devotional qualities. Right? Unlike Karma Yoga or Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga, which are technique-based methodologies, Bhakti Yoga is not a technique-based methodology. It is more of a state of being. And that being manifests by, inspired by certain devotional qualities, which Krishna gives a whole list from text number 12 to 20 of the chapter. Right? So that is how, again, it comes back to the same central theme of always remembering Krishna and becoming a devotee of Krishna and serving Krishna. Like that. Then Krishna then changes his focus to some extra information regarding, so essentially at this point things are clear. What are we supposed to do? We are supposed to engage with this world, right? But in a detached way. So then naturally a question comes that, oh, so which means if the soul is that detached, eternally pure, fully cognizant, all blissful self, then how is it that this Purusha becomes entangled with this material nature or Prakriti? And how is it that his unlimited consciousness or potentially large consciousness, wide-reaching consciousness, becomes limited to this one body, this kshetra? So how is it that the Purusha becomes a kshetragya? That limited conditioned soul is the theme of the 13th chapter. Right? And there we saw, the different questions. What is knowledge? What is the 6 themes? Prakriti, Purusha, Jnanam, Geyam, Kshetra, Kshetragya. We saw that whole science in the 13th chapter. The main theme there is to understand that how, while the soul is the Kshetragya, knower of this body, there is also another Kshetragya called as the Paramatma. And this Paramatma, he not only knows our bodies, but he knows every body. Right? Everybody and every body, both Paramatma knows. Right? And therefore, he is the universal Kshetragya, whereas the Jiva is a more of a localized Kshetragya, like that. And the main lesson we learn from the 13th chapter is Paramatma is our role model. This Paramatma exists within this body, but not gets entangled with this body and still continues to be in here. So that is how the soul also should continue to be in here, wherein it is present but remaining aloof from this world of matter, like that. So making Paramatma as a role model and following his lead is very, very important theme of the 13th chapter. So then the question that comes then, Purusha praktisto hi bhungte prakritijan gunan karanam guna sangasya. In 13th chapter we hear text 22 that because the sangha of the gunas, because the interaction, the modes of material nature, one gets entangled in this material world with this body specifically. So these shackles, these invisible shackles of the 3 gunas is something that we need to transcend. So the entire 14th chapter, the Gunatraya Vibhaga Yoga, Krishna specifically talks about the whole science of the 3 modes of material nature. And then he also explained that by devotional service alone, one will be able to overcome these gunas, right? He says, in the 14th chapter, Mam chayo avyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sagunan samate tatan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. So by this avyabhichari bhakti, or by this unalloyed, uncontaminated, with this pure devotion alone, one will be able to get over this entanglement of the 3 gunas. So the devotional service as the main theme again is brought out in the 14th chapter. Then the 15th chapter, Purushottama Yoga, remember we discussed this as this is the mini Bhagavad Gita in itself. Entire key themes and more is presented there. So we begin that 15th chapter by understanding the nature of this world, nature of the spiritual world, the nature of the jiva. If you remember, we did that whole exercise with a pen and its cap, right? where we understood Krishna, the Jiva is at Krishna's eternally separated parts and parcel, his eternal fragment, right? And how it keeps manah shashtani indriyani prakutisthani karshati. Because of this contaminated consciousness or contaminated chitta or the mind, one is misidentifying with this body, and that needs to be purified. And as long as one is not purified, that same mind helps as a carrier of the soul to transmigrate from one body to another, like that. So, and then after describing the whole soul and transmigrate, we hear about Krishna's greatness once again, how he is the basis of this entire universe, from the infinitesimal to the infinite. Everything is being supported by Krishna. From the big gigantic sun and the moon to the digestive fire within our own body, everything is being controlled by Krishna, or it's manifested by Krishna. Then the very, very important section of this chapter, 15th chapter, comes where, you know, this Purushas, it is described that there are Dvaumau Purusho Loke Kshara Akshara Evacha. But there are this fallible and infallible Purushas or Jivas. But then Uttama Purushastatva Anyaha Paramatmeti iti Udahrita. There is a Uttama Purusha who is neither, or who is beyond fallible and the infallible, right? And that Uttama Purusha is, Krishna says that Yomam evam asammudo janati Purushottama, one who knows that I am that Purushottama, such a person sa sarvavid bhajate mam sarva bhavena bharata, with all their heart and soul they are going to engage in devotional service of Krishna. So literally everything needed is covered in this specific chapter, right? So then, after having discussed the 15th chapter, so in 13, 14, 15, Krishna explained very, very subtle philosophical concepts. But that for the philosophy to be internalized, we need to imbibe certain mood, values, and principles in our life. And finally, that has to translate into certain practices eventually. But the principles are most important. They are the middle layer that is holding practice together, right? If principles are not there, then, you know, either you don't accept the philosophy, or if you have the philosophical understanding, it may not reflect as actions in our own life, right? So therefore, Krishna then says how in the 16th chapter he talks about his whole Daivi Sampadas, the devotional qualities, right? And then he says that one has to develop all these virtues, all these wonderful qualities, and not become a demon. And the rest of the chapter talks about this demoniac mentality. And he says that there's all of this is based in the Shastra. But then, what about those whose who are faith-driven and not Shastra-driven, right? For such people, you know, we don't judge them externally, but analyze their 4 things: food, sacrifice, charity, and austerity. Yajna, dana, tapa, and ahar. The 4 ways in which we are able to verify their state. But these 4 things, or especially 3 things, yajna, dana, and tapa, are never to be given up, right? And that is how Krishna explains beginning of the 18th chapter. When Arjuna asks the difference between a tyagi and a sannyasi, Krishna says that actually some people may say that giving up and detachment may be good, but Krishna says that these 3 things, yajna, dana, and tapa, sacrifice, charity, and austerity, are something that should never be given up. Therefore, become a tyagi. Don't become a sannyasi, but become a tyagi and engage in your yajna, dana, tapa, and you will be equally renounced, because both tyagi and sannyasi are equal. Therefore, to understand, to put this into practice, because becoming a sannyasi is pretty straightforward. You disconnect from this world. But to become a tyagi, you are still connected to this world, but not getting affected by the world. So how do we do that? For that, we have to make this whole transition from the gunas to swabhava to swadharma. So your gunas is something that, you know, the 3 modes, how they influence, they determine your nature or your swabhava. And that gives your inclination. But based on inclination, you may even decide your swadharma, but that swadharma or prescribed duties have to be performed in a way where you do not get entangled. And that is where that whole long section of the 18th chapter, from 18 to 41 verses, explaining the whole principle of motivation and constitution of work. So your nature may be something, but your internal determination, your as a worker, your conception as a knower, your knowledge, all of them have to be rooted in the mode of goodness, right? And then that mode of goodness becomes like your platform to transcendence. And that is where that swadharma, just following your prescribed duties, being true to one's nature, one can still transcend the gunas. And that is where, after going through from swabhava to swadharma, one realizes one's swarupa or one's spiritual identity. Right? That is the progression. And then Krishna, in that 18th chapter, he also spoke about this confidential and more confidential paths. But finally, he gives the most confidential as a direct personal recommendation to Arjuna. And that is the path of surrender. Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja. Right? So that is the path of surrender that Krishna recommends. And then, right, that surrender includes, rendering direct devotional service to the Lord, right? And so if you see, if I were to bring the whole chart together in one place, so you will see here that how the central theme, from all directions as the chapters are progressing, the central theme comes, as you can see in the diagram also, this whole section, the central theme is rotating around this one very important concept of always remembering Krishna and never forgetting Krishna. That's why the verse, Manmanabho Madbhakto Madhyajimam Namaskuru, always remember me, worship me, offer your homage unto me, bow down to me, that way you will attain me. So that is a central verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Literally, it comes in the middle of the Bhagavad Gita, middle of the middle. It comes like that. So you can see, that is why we discussed yesterday as well, that ultimately Bhagavad Gita, it is not a war book. It is definitely not some ordinary Mahabharata book, but rather Bhagavad Gita, it is a whole, it's a life manual which is helping us to develop ultimately this mood of loving Krishna. Right? That is the highest yoga, where you are connecting to Krishna, right? And that is the highest jnana, where you are understanding Krishna. Highest karma, where you are rendering service to Krishna, right? So that is the mood, the central theme that you will see throughout the Bhagavad Gita. It all comes down, it boils down to that one theme of devotional service, right? And that is a mood in this path of surrender. And we saw yesterday also that how this whole the mood of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, especially Srila Rupa Goswami, he gave this process, and finally Srila Prabhupada, he made it even more accessible to the entire world. So we saw that is the real mood of the Bhagavad Gita, and that's the mood of Krishna, right? So we saw those aspects like that. So, and then in the end, I would like to give something interesting. Let me very quickly open the whiteboard here. So because we have studied so much, so I will give you one simple sutra to remember the entire flow of thought of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So the entire Bhagavad Gita itself, if we want to understand, let me very quickly set up this. Yeah. So the entire Bhagavad Gita, if we are trying to summarize it in, if you want to understand the entire flow of thought, this is one very, very easy and simple way of doing it. Right. Okay, yeah. Let me very quickly set up this touchpad. Yeah. Right. So the entire Gita in just one acronym. So how does the Gita it begin with? It begins with the principle of taking guidance. Right. It begins with, so because Arjuna, he was in that kind of a bewildering situation, and likewise life throws always unexpected challenges towards this. So it is very important that one actually approaches a guide. For Arjuna, it was Krishna. for us, it could be a representative of Krishna, right? Or such advanced souls who can provide us that guidance. That is the first step when we approach to the Bhagavad Gita, or our own life or spirituality itself. We need to take that guidance. But once you take that guidance, the next step is where we learn to incorporate how do I conduct my life, what do I do in my life. And there the second aspect, which is the integrated yoga. What is our integrated yoga? Karma on the platform of jnana and with the mood and intention of bhakti. So this integration by which we are engaging in all these aspects, our physical, mental, emotional, all our aspects, our spiritual, all our aspects are, or all sense of being are channelized and engaged, right? That is the integrated yoga process that we saw, right? And then, but while doing so, working is one thing, but all of this eventually should give us a telescope. What does this telescope do? This telescope, it gives us the vision to see Krishna as the essence of everything. Seeing Krishna as the essence, right? And that is how one will gradually learn to transcend from matter. Integrated yoga, as you start applying, then you develop that vision to learn to see Krishna. That is what we saw in the middle 6 chapters, right? And finally, as you start applying all of this, there is still one missing link. We need the access. And that access, it comes by properly understanding this principle of surrender. Right? We may be learning to see Krishna as the essence, but finally, if you want to get that access into that higher realm, right? Access into the spiritual world, access into our own ability to transcend this world. So that the key, the ultimate password is that this principle of surrender that we saw in 1866. So basically, our whole Gita journey is about this. It begins with accepting some guidance. It begins with channelizing our life according to the principles of integrated yoga, the actions part of our life, and the vision. We need to learn to see Krishna as the essence of everything, right? And at the level of our heart, to get that access, surrender again. It's very much a mood. It's a principle, right? It's a whole process in which we are training our heart to surrender. So at all levels, at our physical, at a vision, mental, intellectual levels, and at the level of our core being, right? At all these levels, these 4 principles of Gita: guidance, integrated yoga, telescope, and access. So that way you will know what essentially Gita is talking about. So those of you who are reading the Bhagavad Gita for the first time, if you just remember these 4 words, what Gita means, then you will know, oh, this is the overall flow of the Bhagavad Gita. This is the main themes of the Bhagavad Gita. And this is the main purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. So you cannot miss that out like that. Okay. So yeah, so these are the few thoughts which I wanted to share as part of this summary session. Of course, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being such wonderful audience throughout this course. And we had such active Q&A sessions. Many of you sent me some direct messages also, which I replied back, and we had a lot of interactions live as well. And as I mentioned in the previous session also, that we hope that this is not the end of your study of the Bhagavad Gita, but this becomes a beginning of your study of the Bhagavad Gita. And I would like to thank once again each and every one of you for being a wonderful audience for this course. And we hope that you stay connected with us and participate in more such active, systematic study of philosophy. All right. So thank you all very much. And I'm hoping there are no questions, because today is a summary class. But if still somebody would like to speak, then or maybe if anybody would like to just share their experience of this course. In fact, I'd like to hear that more than the questions. We have already taken a lot, but I would like to hear your own experience of the course. So please feel free to raise your hand in the participants list. I can already see somebody raise their hand. Yes, Vanishriji, would you like to share your experience of the course?
First of all, Prabhu, thank you so much. Wonderful. In fact, if I say something, probably it would be short of words, not making justice to the way you presented the utmost philosophy of Gita. As I said in one of the sessions earlier too, I've listened to Bhagavad Gita by a couple of ISKCON devotees, and I've read myself the copy of Bhagavad Gita. Honestly, I have not got the clarity I have right now from listening to your sessions. Beautiful. The anecdotes, the comparisons, connecting to each of the chapters, the flow, the gist of the summary sessions. It's just awesome, Prabhu. In fact, I don't know, I'll be missing to listen to you. And in fact, whenever I get time, I just went through the sessions, especially those third chapter and the fourth chapter. Always I used to get confused, pretty confused. One thing because of the title, and I was not able to connect the flow of third, fourth, and the fifth chapters. But now, to some extent, yes, I have the clarity. I'm really grateful to you, Prabhu, for giving the wonderful insights and beautifully explaining the themes of third, fourth, and fifth connecting chapters there.
Right.
And your way of explaining Buddhi Yoga. Wow. My goodness. I used to get so confused with that word, but now, even now you ask me, I can say it's just on the top of my head. And Yajna too, Varshan Yajna too. Beautiful, Prabhu. My goodness. Where did you get such concepts to explain to us, making it so simpler to us? And 13th chapter, yes, rightly said. I never touched 13th chapter at all. I felt so technical out of my head. But you made it so simpler, beautiful, Prabhu. I owe you, I don't know, infinite times thanks to you, Prabhu. Yeah. I'm really grateful to you again. And the way you explained the 17th, the 18th chapter used to be kind of, my God, such a lengthy one. And again, repeat of the same thing. But those repeats, you gave us beautiful insights. Wow. Yeah. So nice, Prabhu.
Thank you.
I'm really grateful. I'm sorry to take so much time.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful and look forward to your sessions, Prabhu. Sure, honestly, look forward to your sessions. And again, repeat the Bhagavad Gita telecast. My God, I would look forward to. You don't know how many times I've listened to third and the fourth chapters and 12th chapter. 13th chapter, so that I'll start liking that, right? So, but I would definitely look forward to your Bhagavad Gita sessions and much more to learn ahead, Prabhu. Please accept my humble obeisances and dandavats.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you so much for such flowery appreciation. And these videos are there.
Prabhu, I meant so. I can't use vocabulary like you. I'm like a very small person in this world, insignificant soul in this world. But I made an attempt to talk to you and speak so much, but I really mean it. Any shortage of words, that's not the limitation of your explanation. That's what I would want to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And these videos are there online. So anytime, in fact, I'll encourage, for repeated hearing. So you can actually internalize some concepts. Sometimes it may feel like, we understood, but repetition is always the key. So please feel free to do that.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. If I may ask you, in case we need some kind of, you're stuck somewhere and then we need to ask you some kind of, clarity, how is that we can connect with you, Prabhu? Do you mind?
Right. So, I mean, those of you who are there in the students WhatsApp group, so you have access to, my number. So you can always post the questions on WhatsApp and you'll get your reply in few days.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for
Okay. All
keeping
right.
it open. Thank you so much
Thank you.
again.
Yeah.
Grateful
Thank
to
you.
you.
Hare Krishna. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yes. All right. So we have, okay. So Gail ji, I hope you don't have questions today.
I do, but I will say it was only one, but I will save it for a WhatsApp
Yes.
conversation if
Thank
possible.
you.
But yeah, how can I avoid expressing my very deep gratitude for your very clear explanations, and most importantly for me, your very patient answering of my millions of questions. You have certainly brought much more clarity for me to the Gita. And I've been trying to study Gita for a long time, but I felt that your presentation was quite exceptional, and I am looking forward to reviewing the entirety of this series, through the recordings. And I also look forward to any future course or seminar that you choose to give in the future. There was a link if anybody wanted to make financial contribution to the course. I was trying to give quadruple the amounts requested. I wasn't. There was some difficulty involved there. I've been in communication with Priya Chaitanya Prabhu, and somehow we still haven't been able to resolve that. But I'm just mentioning that to let you know how very much I was.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind generosity. Yes.
Yeah, I was just letting you know. That was just my way of letting you know how profoundly I do appreciate your style of teaching.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Again, especially for all of your patient answering of all of my questions.
Thank you.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Thank you. Prabhu.
Thank you. Looking forward to more courses.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Lajaji, would you like to share something?
Yes, I only joined today because Gail told me about this incredible class. And I feel that she also sent me a link to recordings, but if I'm not part of the WhatsApp group, and I wanted to know how to be a part of that and how to learn more about classes that you teach, because I got so much out of today. I've missed, all the other classes relative to this course. And so I would like to know how to go forward with learning about your classes. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So yeah, I'm just sending you the number on which you can actually send me a text message. And I'll send you the link to the WhatsApp group, the student WhatsApp group, right? And that way, and also to the course organizer, Priya Chaitanya ji, so he can update you, keep you updated about our future courses, and also he'll send you the playlist of the entire recordings of this entire course, so you can definitely access it there.
Thank you so much. You're a very, very gifted teacher. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your kind words. Hare Krishna.
Bless you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Nitya Narasimha Prabhu, would you like to speak?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Dandavat
Prabhu. Amazing session, Prabhuji. It was exuberant session, as some of the devotees already said. Like your teachings are like flowing the Ganges. It is superb. I think by profession you are a lecturer, Prabhu. The way in which you convince the students, it was amazing, Prabhu. And my request is that are you doing like this for Srimad Bhagavatam class also, Prabhuji?
Well, we haven't planned anything as yet now, but maybe Krishna willing, we will do that. So as part of the mandate of the Govardhan School of Yoga, we focus on specific topics. But yeah, we'll definitely will keep you all posted about this sure.
No words to express, Prabhu. It is really amazing, and whoever hears your classes, really, they become devotees of Krishna. That much
Hare.
I'm trying. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Okay. Alok Chaudhary, Prabhu, would you like to speak?
Ravidendra Pradam.
Dandat, Prabhu.
I'm really obliged the way you took up the entire session, Prabhuji. Though I'm new to the Bhagavad Gita, I have read it in bits and pieces, but probably the conceptual clarity in terms of totality I got for the first time. And some of the basic takeaway probably is the complete surrender, which I'm taking as a sense. Probably I need I would say 50-60% I got the clarity in terms of conceptual clarity, but probably I need to again do the self adhyay, probably then we'll get more clarity. But it is certainly made a good basis, and it has generated the inquisitiveness within me to go have a deep dive to understand Krishna, his potencies, and probably devotion because of the power he garner around that. So probably we'll again go through it. I would like to really thank you a lot for this entire session. Would like to have more session around Bhagavad Gita from your side, and probably like we discussed yesterday, few more sessions on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which you said the post graduation, wherein the bhaktis, the essence of bhakti can more be understood and practiced. Probably I'm looking forward that. I'm very unknown and beginner in the entire bhakti devotion process.
Right.
Would not be able to express the way eloquently you and the more senior devotees are, but still have started the beginning, made the beginning. With your grace, would like to take it forward.
Wonderful, wonderful. So welcome to this journey, and we have our full prayers and blessings towards you, and we hope that you can also start eloquently explaining things and coming from your heart and inspiring more people in this journey of self-awareness. Very cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, Arvindji, would you like to share something?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavat.
Dandavat.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. Actually, I used to read Bhagavad Gita, but in between, I was not continuing it. I was thinking that I will start reading again and again, but because I was not having clarity, so because of that, maybe I was not, motivated to do that. So just I started reading, and 13 chapter onwards, I never used to understand the whole part. So I started from 13 chapter only, and the day I started from 13 chapter, that day only I got added in the group.
Oh.
And morning I started, and evening I was added in the group, and I was in the class. So that was the Krishna's blessing. And now I got so much of clarity. I knew now why I was not, where the things were lacking. And especially the Buddhi Yoga, the way you explained, it was like marvelous. And lastly, today you gave the acronym Gita, and you explained everything, that the heart, so that we can, every time we can, like a torchlight, okay, where the Gita is going. Earlier, I was not understanding, okay, Arjuna asked something and Krishna is explaining something, but why is explaining like that? I was not used to understand thing only. Now things are so much clear, and thank you very much, Prabhu. I am eternally grateful to you for the clarification.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prabhu. And especially the way you explained the Swabhav, we should understand our Swabhav, then our Swadharma, so that we can ultimately realize our Swarup.
Yes.
And ultimately we should surrender to God. So this is so simply you explain things like, so now the things, okay, I know, okay, what are the steps should be done, like. So thank you very much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Yes. Yeah, exactly. Like every new reader, so what the whole idea behind this course was to give a very quick overview. So actually, if you go into more details, there is so much more to discover in the Bhagavad Gita. In fact, just the number of sessions we could have spent in just one chapter alone, right? So there is so much more, like I said, to actually dive deep into the Bhagavad Gita. But sometimes when you go too much into the details, we may even forget the main point. So the idea of these sessions to be like your roadmaps for each chapter. But having got the roadmap, you have to enter the journey. That is why I said just doing this course is not, all in all. So I encourage you to actually read the entire book verse by verse, line by line, word by word, understand, all the purpose of Srila Prabhupada. Then you will can really internalize and benefit more from more than this course actually. So like that. All right. So thank you all so much for your wonderful words of appreciation. This is very encouraging for the entire team here at Govardhan School of Yoga. And we really look forward to your participation in all our future sessions and future courses. And we'll keep you posted with our latest courses around. And with this, let's conclude now with our final concluding prayers one last time for this course. Joining your palms together. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunattu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.